I can never
Anthrocon line?
Anthrocon. No, no,
Virtual
no. We got
Anthrocon?
rid of Anthrocon line. We finally were able to like put that one to bed.
Anthro
Really?
I think it's
O'Connell
just Anthro. I think
Was
it's
that a
Anthro.
one-time
Yeah,
use
Anthrocon line.
license?
Yeah, yeah. I think
Is that like an
we
Anthrocon
accidentally.
line, Econoline van? Anthroconoline van? That's how we
Anthrocon van.
transported all this
Antlion
stuff.
O'Connell line.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello again
Hello,
from the
friends.
virtual world. Time warp.
Welcome.
Let's do the time warp again. It's a repeat of 2020, unfortunately, but we're keeping people safe. I'm
Yep.
Fizz, although I look like a deer. I look like peppercorns, my deer. And this is
And I'm
Fur.
Fur. I look like a kangaroo. Mostly.
And
I don't know what I
and
am. I'm always
Judah
confused.
Goat here is running the camera. So
Hi.
let's see him say hi.
Hi.
And so we're gonna wind up doing another panel for you guys for talking about VR and the furry world and stuff. And
Mhm.
it was an interesting way to get through 2020 in the way of the social experience. I feel like we kind of connected with a lot of our friends who got into VR and got to experience the golden years of this whole thing. But we know that there's definitely a bunch of people out there that have not yet had the VR experience as such, and they might be wondering about VR things and how to get into it and how to like do stuff and
Absolutely.
whatnot. And
Yep.
and so we're back for that panel again for the people there. So yeah, you've been
So
doing a lot
Fizz
of
and
work in
I.
VR.
Oh yeah, I've been doing a lot of work in VR. My day job turned into work in VR accidentally. It's been a lot of fun. And the cool thing about VR and building for VR right now is it is incredibly accessible. Like it is something that anyone can pick up and learn, even you, person out in internet land. That's what we're here for at this panel. So, we're going to talk a little bit about building for VR chat, but this applies to a lot of other things. Like, if you want to make just general purpose games, a lot of this stuff is transferable, and a lot of this stuff, a lot of the knowledge is pretty universal. So, it's really good to be able to translate some of the stuff we're going to be teaching you over the next hour. Um, so my name's Fur. I built the virtual Anthrocon world last year. I built the virtual Anthrocon viewing party this year. Fizz has made a lot of incredible things inside of VR chat as well. We'll be sure to show those off later. But we're just gonna start talking about like what it takes to start creating things. When people start and they ask me like, what do I want to start making? People they'll say either I'll tell them to either do worlds or avatars, like focus on one or the other. So do you want to talk about worlds first or avatars first?
Um, I guess either would work, but we got some cool avatars here, so that's possibly a good place
Yeah.
to start. We're
So
a little bit washed out though. It's quite bright in virtual Pittsburgh here right
yeah,
now. So
it's I think our panel's
I'm
like
getting my
in
suntan.
the late afternoon anyway, so we had to set the lighting
Yeah,
to kind
sun's
of
coming from the
match.
wrong direction. You should fix that. It'd be over there. Hey, we
Um,
shot all the panels that you guys have been watching. The whole crew with virtual estate. They were literally like using an app to figure out like where the sun would set in the thing, so we get these great shots. And then the weather didn't cooperate, so we didn't get as
of
spectacular
course not.
sunsets as we wanted. Yeah.
It was definitely not all that fun. So,
Yeah.
so a lot of people really want to build avatars in VR chat because that's one of the really cool things about this platform is that you can very easily either customize or build or tweak an avatar to kind of represent what you look like. This whole platform is about representation, about what you are, being able to talk about you as how you feel like you should be, showing off your persona, being able to do cool things with it. Um, exactly. There's four big things that I talk to people when I bring up making an avatar. And you have to kind of know how all of them interplay with one another. And you also have to know where you can cheat, what you don't necessarily need to know to start off. So, if you're making an avatar, there's four real big components to it. There's the mesh, there's the rig, there's the texturing, and then there's also the shaders. And I'll talk about all of them kind of as together. So if you're making an avatar, you have to create a 3D model. That 3D model is just a whole bunch of math. It just says there are a whole bunch of points on your body, and they're all connected into little triangles, and they make the actual like body mesh. They make
But importantly, you don't have to know math to use math, because the
Exactly.
software is what lets you do that.
Yep, you absolutely do not need to know math. I'm a theater major and I'm able to do this, so don't worry. It's very very straightforward. But you have to understand that everything's represented kind of um as triangles,
Polygons.
as polygons. That's the word. Represent as polygons. So you might hear people say like the polygon count of this character is really high, or this mesh has a very complicated topology. It basically just means that the geometry that represents your mesh is very, has some quirks. Most people, when they're building a mesh, kind of treat it like they do in real life if they're sculpting with clay. They'll use a program like ZBrush or the sculpt feature in Blender to just start massaging the model into what looks like an avatar head. You don't need to worry about how it moves. You're just trying to create a static looking texture at this point.
Usually in a T-pose.
Yeah, usually in some kind of a T-pose, which is the easiest way to get your avatar rigged up, which is kind of the next thing. So your
and assert dominance.
And assert dominance. So when you're in VR, you're using your headset, your hands, and in some cases, people also have leg trackers and feet trackers. And what you do is your position of your stuff within your real space is translated to your avatar. Now, the way that it's translated is it says, okay, your hand is here, your character's hands need to be here. The way that that's represented within the game is by the rig. So inside of your avatar, once you have the mesh built out, you're going to build the rig. And what the rig is a set of bones, and it basically says, hey, your chest is here, your arm is here. Inside of this model are a whole bunch of little tiny bones, and they tell your game engine, Unity or VR chat or whatever you're using, that this is how the model moves. This is how a finger, the finger's connected to the hand, it's going to move like this. The way that your rig connects to your mesh, your body, is through a thing called weight painting. And this is probably the most tedious part about ever building an avatar, because you have to basically tell your program, hey, this collection of triangles that I made that looks like a finger, yeah, this all connects to my finger bone. This connects to my hand bone. This connects to my arm. And that way, when you go into your game and you move your finger, the game knows, hey, all this stuff that looks like a finger, it is a finger. I'm going to move it like a finger. Most of the people that I talk to, like when they're running into problems with their avatar, like it's not animating properly, it doesn't look right, it kind of walks a little funny. It's usually a problem with the weight painting. I could spend like hours talking about weight painting, how to make things move back and forth, like how to properly balance weight paints, how to properly make sure your mesh looks right. But there are way better people online. Royal Skies on YouTube too is a way better tutorial than I'll ever do. But the big thing and the big thing is it's really hard to explain it, and it's really hard to kind of teach it like over a YouTube channel or over a live stream. It's just something like go in there, play around with it, and you're definitely gonna be able to figure out a lot easier. It's one of those things where, and if you're just starting out, you're gonna see a lot of concepts and a lot of words that make no sense. Don't worry about it. Just play around. You'll figure out the vocab later. It makes sense. Trust me.
Yeah, don't be intimidated by the process, because everybody that's a master at doing this stuff never woke up knowing it. So everybody kind of started from zero and learned. So it's try, learn, do. It's what dreams are made of.
Try, learn, fail, swear a lot.
Crawl,
try
walk,
again.
Stumble twice.
Remember, experience.
Exactly.
Experience is what you get when you don't get what you want.
Exactly.
Drop some
and I've got a lot of
experience.
experience. um,
I
yeah.
experienced failure so hard, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's how I succeed. So.
Yep. Now, if you want to make a, if you want to make a, if you want to make a VR chat avatar, specifically with your modeling rigging, a lot of people they don't even do that. They'll just go and they'll purchase a base that's already modeled and already rigged. That's what this model is. This is a Kanga by my good friend named Spaghetti. Um, you buy the base, um, and you buy it all rigged up. All that relationships I was talking about, the hands are moving, all the ears, everything already functions just as one kit. You'd have to buy it, and you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to learn any of that. So a lot of people, and you'll see a lot of people in VR chat, kind of skip those first two steps, and they kind of all the things that they care about is the texturing. So texturing is actually about the colorization. It's about what your character or what the model looks like. If you have an untextured character, it's going to be basically just flat gray, and it has no color information. It doesn't look like anything. So a lot of people will start at this step because it's the easiest way to make a character kind of look like you. Like my character
Yeah,
is
because
a
the
skunk.
model, when you get the model, it's already going to be rigged well, so it'll move and things like that. So the only thing that you're doing is just changing the colors and textures of the texture map to more closely look like your character, and it's very easy and fairly intuitive to be able to get into that, especially if you get the asset sets and are using something like Substance Painter that lets you literally paint kind of directly interactively on the model.
Yeah, paint directly on it. It's very much 3D Photoshop. It's owned by Adobe, so it basically is Photoshop.
You can also just use Photoshop if you already have that.
Yeah, you can also use Photoshop. So textures are generally square images, and they have the character that you want to texture kind of cut up and splayed out on a 2D image. So you're able to recolor it, put it back on the character, and it'll wrap it back up. So for example, if you were to cut off this texture, it like shows, like the ears are on one corner, the face is on another, the body's on another, and you can either use Substance Painter and it'll let you preview it directly on the model, or you can use Photoshop and jump back and forth. Blender has a bunch of really good painting tools in it. I always recommend to people Blender has a very good tool set if you don't need to use all the features in Substance.
So there's just a simple texture change between logo and Hawaiian pattern.
Yep. So that's the same underlying mesh. That's the same underlying rig. It's just the actual image on top of it has changed. The colorization and the representation of it is different.
And we want to go full math mode for a second, for.
Yeah.
Ooh. Shaders.
So actually
Mandelbrot.
Yeah, this is a. Hey, that's a very good segue into the next thing I always bring up. So one of the weird technical bits that I really need to that kind of gets confusing and no one ever explained to me when I started. A texture is just the colors. A texture is just like, this is gray, this is white, this is pink. A texture on its own doesn't actually give you any information into the game engine. It uses a thing called a shader that translates the images or the information you give it in the texture into whatever's in the game engine. Now, a lot of shaders try to recreate reality. They're called PBR shaders, physically based rendering shaders. And then a texture plus a shader stuffed together is called a material. So you might also hear people say like, oh, this avatar uses a bunch of materials. It basically just means it uses a bunch of combinations of shaders and textures kind of together. But the thing with shaders is
besides... Oh,
mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Oh,
sorry, we had some delay. This happened last year where it was Yeah, it was a bit hard because we have delay between us, and then that's different than the delay that you're hearing. So we're trying not to step on each other because that happened last year during the panel, and it sounded fine to us, but when we played it back, it sounded really bad. But yeah, one of the things I was going to point out though is that if you think about it, is like most people think about texture map as being the color. But there's a lot of other maps that can be applied, things like a specular map that shows how glossy or matte surfaces are. If there's a lot of things that you look at in real life, like for instance, like if something's going to be leather, it may have that sort of leather stipple texture to it, but you think about leather having surface characteristics that as you look at it from different angles, the lighting may, catch the little creases and crevices on it differently and appear lighter or darker, or something like concrete or fabric or such with that. So there's a lot of things like a specular map. There's things like a normal map where if you look at a cracked surface, if you remember, like, Doom and Quake and stuff, like the older 3D games, like, from afar, the texture would look great, but when you walk up to it, you're like, oh, there's cracks in it and stuff. But then you look at it closely and you see that it's just all flat. But with being able to do things like with what's called the normal map, it affects how the shader interprets the surface of it, so you can actually make the geometry look really complex with all sorts of little minute details and such in it that can literally be painted in as 3D detail, but more so than just the texture map itself.
Yeah, so here, we'll give you an example. Here, follow me, camera guy. Dynamic. So this is a recreation of the Riverwalk. So you can see here, the concrete look and texture here is mostly a texture. There's only a color texture on here. There's no normal texture. There's no reflection texture. So it looks super flat. Like you can see that it kind of looks like there's bumps, but that's just different colorations. Over here on top of the water, we have a normal map. So I'm not sure how well it translates to the camera, but if you look, it looks like it's kind of bumping up and down.
Actually, grab the camera and run back and forth here while looking at it, because you can see the changes in the normal map as you move. And then as you look back towards the sun, so as you point back towards Fur, you can see the little specular surfaces that come on the surface of that water. So it's important to remember that it looks very dynamic, but the water itself is only just a flat sheet. It is the magic of the shader and the normal map and the specular map that winds up giving it that much more sophisticated appearance. So the same thing that you see in Worlds will also wind up happening on characters. So for instance, like with my fur textures, this is flat polygons here, but because there's a normal map that's applied into there, the fur looks like it has a lot more depth. And as I move the hands around, you can actually see that that appearance change. So as Fur was describing, it would be a material is typically a number of those things composited together. So you can, and it's a lot of fun just to play with and just try different combinations and see what the results look like. And you can do that interactively inside of things like Unity and Substance Painter.
Yep. If you want to get a little bit more advanced, VRChat lets you import your own custom shaders. So you can actually make your own shader to do, virtually whatever you want, and you can have hooks to bring it into VRChat, and you can adjust it, and you can change the parameters within the game to do really cool things. You'll see a lot of avatars that have, they'll have weird shinies, or you can use a shader to make it so your character only shows up in a mirror and you're invisible to everyone else. Those are
or
all
you do what I did, and I just I coded the Mandelbrot shader, which is actually incredibly easy to do the Mandelbrot set. And if you've ever heard the Jonathan Colton song, he literally explains to you how you write the shader. The rest of it's just details.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so in this case, like with the Mandelbrot on here, it's actually mapping the results of the shader onto the shirt. And the neat thing is, the closer you actually get, the more detail that it actually has, because every pixel that's being rendered by the GPU is actually going through a series of computations to generate that dynamic image. So in this case, you're literally seeing all completely dynamic math.
Yeah.
But I'm also geeky that way, because I was just like, hey, I want to play with shader stuff. And I hadn't seen anybody else make a Mandelbrot shirt in VRChat. So, it's cool to be first, at least as far as I'm aware.
It's really nice to understand about like 50% about what he says sometimes.
So I was about to take a minute to show
I
off
only
your little
understand
plushie
about
inside your avatar.
25%. The rest of it, I just
Yeah.
oh yes. Oh yeah. Also, yeah. Plug on that is Blanca is the one that did my avatar. He's at Fox with Ramen on Twitter, and he does amazing work. This is actually the first deer that he'd ever done. He'll do a lot of customizations to base like canid characters, oh man, it's just like Klaus and Jusky, and like just absolutely just outstanding work. He is a wonderful, wonderful guy to work with. So if you're looking for a completely custom avatar, somebody to consider commissioning.
Yeah. There's a lot of really experienced avatar makers that will make you avatars, and a lot of people think that it's a very costly thing, but it is a very labor-intensive thing to do. A lot of avatar makers will offer retexturing, recustomization. Again, you don't necessarily need to go all the way down to building an avatar from scratch to have something that is really custom and really super special to you. Like this is a retextured kangaroo. There's plenty of people of the same body mesh, but because I put my little jacket on there and I've changed the texture up, it's still very much, an avatar that I feel represents me. So I think
one other thing that you can point out is like as something else to do with avatars, because we've seen it especially a lot, is people will get the avatar, they're not good at like modeling stuff for the avatar, but because of the Unity store, you can just make your avatar do things like I want donuts, and just you can literally make sort of like little fun gags and objects that you can attach to your avatar, or especially the kangaroos. If you got a pouch, you can attach objects to your hand and do a little magic trick and reach in there and pull out a martini or a tiny version of yourself. Or there's just, if you ever run into Standard Nathan on VR chat, and he'll probably be around on the weekend here, ask him to show you some of the magic tricks, because Standard Nathan has just gone crazy on making cool stuff.
Yeah, so one of the concepts back when I was I used to work as a performer at a theme park, and one of the concepts that was just starting out was the concept of the digital puppet, where you were either in some kind of something. This was before the VR was really taking off, but it was something akin to a controller system where you, as a performer, are manipulating a digital character. And I'm seeing a lot of those concepts that I heard about back then really represented here nowadays. So the cool thing with VR chat is, in addition to making the model, you can do a lot of cool things to program, cool effects, things that pop on and off your avatar. You're able to change clothes using your controllers and using a control menu system. And I've seen a lot of that. I think the bulk of creativity in VR chat is in that, where people will use that the programming system that you have just for your avatars to do a lot of really cool things with it. And it's taken me back to when I was talking to people about this whole digital puppeteering thing, because you're not necessarily trying to do every single thing on your own. You're trying to, do stuff that you can't do in reality, and to do really cool things. Like Standard Nathan does a lot of magic tricks, and all he's doing is he's using his controllers, to manipulate objects to appear, disappear. But because he does such a good job with the performative aspect of it, he's puppeteering a character to do all these cool things. Like, I've seen so many people become so creative when they're given that tool set, and that's what I really love seeing. Like, when I see people in VR chat doing stuff like that, that's what I love to see. Like, it's that weird performance aspect, and I feel like that's why a lot of people everyone comes into VR chat, or they come into VR, they come into Neos, they come into even Chill Out, and they're like, they come in thinking they're just going to hang out, and they're kind of like, oh, maybe I'll get my avatar and maybe I'll go wander around, I'll be an animal for a while. And then you realize that, like, oh, I can be an avatar that has a top hat, and I can make, you know, magic tricks with it, and I can mess with people, and that's the bug. That's what gets everyone into this.
Yeah.
That's what I think. Like the whole being the animal is what gets you into the game, but what keeps you here is the stuff you can do, like to be a performer. Because
I just like I like being able to change avatars with like 2 clicks on here rather than like, oh, I got to go up to my hotel room and then change fursuits and then come back down and elevators, and you're just like, boom, you're just there.
Yeah, like.
So, actually, Nightclaw, time check. How much do we have left? Because you held up 7, and I don't know what that means. 25 minutes. Okay, so we're about halfway through. So if we want to switch to worlds, we could do some quick world hopping and talk about that. So maybe we give some folks some visual fun stuff to see. So I'm going to drop a portal here, or?
Yeah, totally. So the other half of it, and this is where a lot of people also love to build stuff, is making worlds. So I kind of found my itch making worlds. I started my first VR chat world was actually this last year, where I pirated Anthrocon. I decided I was going to try to recreate the world in VR chat. Since then, I've also worked on recreating MFF. I've recreated IFC. I recreated First Squared. It's kind of been my thing for a little while. And it's been a lot of fun. World building is something that gives you such a wide amount of creativity, the ability to make stuff that's either something grounded in reality. You want to make yourself a nice cozy cabin world that you can hang out with your friends in, or you can make something completely off the walls that could never exist in real life. Like I saw someone make a bunch of space pirate ship battle worlds. Like it's very, very liberating what you can do. And it's super forgiving. Like if you make a mistake, all you have to do is press undo. If you upload a world that's messed up, you can just re-upload it. There's no nothing about this is urgent. Nothing about this is like important. You can knock stuff down, build it up again, and you can keep learning and keep uploading and keep making more stuff. And I feel like a lot of people have been, especially like now that VRChat's Udon, their programming language, has definitely gotten a lot more mature. You're seeing a lot more really impressive stuff in the worlds now, and I think this is a great time to get into it because if you learn how to build VR worlds, a lot of that skills will translate into making levels for, you know, proper video games. If you want to get into making a video game after this, you know, you can use those skills and they translate very, very well. I'm working on a standalone game right now called Kaijujufai, where you are a giant monster tearing down cities. I know, original concept. But a lot of the stuff I learned from building in VR chat has helped me developing that game a lot quicker. The people I'm working with have been professional video game developers for a long time, and it's really weird knowing that my year and some change in VR chat experience has gotten me to the skill level where I can talk shop with these people. So did you find a world yet?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Shall we go for all the feels world? For
Let's
people
go
who've
for
been to
some feels.
Anthrocon? All right. Here we go. So we're just waiting for Fur to res in right now. But if you've been to Anthrocon, this probably looks familiar. Or if you've been watching our fantastic programming for the week thus far, we are at the riverfront as a point cloud. This is actually a COVID project that I started working on just basically for the fun of it because I was bored, and we built a LiDAR scanner, and it kind of worked better than we expected. So we took it to Pittsburgh last July and got a whole bunch of scans. We actually have more scans that we're still trying to pull in. Stuff's been very busy, but so it'll continue to expand. But we'd like to give you a brief tour of of places that, if you've been to Anthrocon before, should look very familiar. So you want to join us, and we'll go run up to 10th and Penn? That sound good?
Yeah, let's go.
All right.
So I love taking people to this world because, like I was saying just a second ago, like you can either build something based in reality or you can build something that's completely completely off the walls, couldn't exist in reality. This is the perfect marring of both because this is an exact an exact copy of the exact dimensions of what's at down in Pittsburgh, down at the riverfront, down in front of the West End. But it's also something that doesn't exist at all in the real world. Like that's what I think is so cool about this.
We've added some various hidden surface line removals, but everything else is basically points that you can walk through, and it is scans that we took. It's about 40 different scans that are put together to create about 16 million points of data. And basically, it is Pittsburgh all the way from the Riverwalk all the way behind the West End. So we're kind of running up here, but we'll just run full speed here to get up there faster.
Whee! Oh man.
So here's a place that should look familiar. Not generally advisable to stand here in the real world, but in VR we can because the traffic is quite low. So here's 10th and Penn. That is the Westin Hotel, and you got Tenpenny there. You got the David L. Lawrence Convention Center behind you, and you can basically come here. I think we're going to try to link it from your VR world first, so people can find it. But if you search DLCC LiDAR, LIDAR, you can wind up popping in there. If for some reason it does come up black, restart VR chat. There's a memory leak or something that has occasionally caused it to not load for people the first try, but you get a kind of a cool synthwave score and other things with that. So essentially our rig consists of it was a little spinning thing that basically would shoot a laser out about 700,000 times a second and would measure the distance out to whatever it struck, and it would basically spin around and acquire all the data that you see in the actual data set here. The colors are based on how reflective the return is, from basically blue being not really reflective to orange being really reflective, and then red is super reflective, like for road signs, things like that. So these are the normal kind of LiDARs that are normally used for self-driving cars and things, but we wanted to see if we could acquire some geometry with it, and it kind of worked out better than expected. So we're like, heck, let's see if we can put this into VR chat, and we did, and hence the world here. And it's funny with people that have been to Anthrocon, we drag them in here and they're like, oh my gosh, they got all the feels, and it's like it's a bunch of dots, but I've been here before. And then it's really freaky. And Nightclaw can tell you, or Judah, your experiences normally existing as a much shorter avatar in this world.
Yeah, so I have a bit of a taller avatar today, but when we first made this world, I was using a very short avatar, which resulted in me spending a whole bunch of time running around this world short. And then when we came here in real life again, I felt too tall. It actually made it strange to walk around in Pittsburgh. VR problems.
Yeah, it's strange because we had spent so much time in the VR point space that you go back to Pittsburgh in reality and you're like, I know this from the computer. I know this from VR. It's really weird. So and some of the details a little bit hard to see probably on the video stream, but there's really cool like stars in the sky. There's a cool like synthwave track that plays. And again, we did get more scans. So as time goes on, we are going to expand the world. There's some convergence issues as well that we're working on it. So don't look too closely around the edges. It will continue to get better.
This is one of those things when I tell people, like, when people say like, oh, VR isn't that cool, like, you know, what can I do with VR that's I can't do just on a desktop? Why can't I, you know, just play a normal computer game and get the same effect? This is one of those worlds where I guarantee you this is one of those things that have just sold me on VR as being such a cool concept because this is the first time I've been here since we were in Pittsburgh for Anthrocon Online. And I now have a real appreciation for just like how weirdly perfect this is. Also, I'm noticing the same thing. I'm about 2 foot shorter than I am IRL, and I'm just like, wow, everything's so big.
Yeah, and conversely, if you actually switch to a particularly tall or like macro-sized avatar, this is a really cool map to walk around in because you can literally exist as, you know, a 30-foot tall Lucario. I have the Lord Lucario that works well for that. But you're starting to look at like streets and things that you've you know, remembered existing at in Pittsburgh. Oh, there you go, as fur there. But as a very very it looks like a tabletop model of the city.
Yeah, this is really cool. You guys are really small. I gotta change back.
Oh no, he's stuck like that. If you become a macro fur in VR, you become a macro fur in real life.
Oh man,
Is that how it works?
I could not afford that much food. I literally could not.
I guess it would be kind of expensive to be a macro fur in real life, wouldn't it be? Like just imagine the calorie consumption.
I spend enough money on shampoo. Do you think I'm gonna have to be able to do all that? No, man.
Yeah, I don't want that. Trackers. There we go. Oh, I was in front of the couch. So yeah, if you show up in this world, we won't spoil too much of it, but yeah, you can actually literally go all the way around the West End, the back area there. You can find what we think is probably the only graffiti that has ever been LiDAR scanned into a VR chat world. And you can find it on Google Maps as well if you do the Google Street View. But yeah, check it out and enjoy, especially if you've been here before. You'll have the wonderful experience of just going, I know this place. Or if you've not been to Anthrocon, but you're going to wind up going next year or in the future, then you'll get a leg up because you'll be here and then you'll be super freaked out when you go real life and you'll see the same thing. I want the same thing with Euro because I've never been over there, but they did such an amazing job with the recreation of was it the Estelle, the hotel that's over there. Or Estrelle, I'm sorry, I can't say right.
Hey, if we spell that wrong, they're gonna get really angry at us.
Yeah, you need the German precision. But
it's
yeah,
okay. I don't understand German, so.
You know, but yes, I'm looking forward to having that same experience of having basically fursuited in that hotel without having fursuited in that hotel. So. Let's see. Let's jump through some other cool worlds here since we're talking about world building. Let's see. Let me find another good one here.
Okay, I can keep talking. I can stall. One of the cool things about world building is you can do stuff that's either, you know, based in reality, that's totally unique, something that's a little bit of both. A lot of people love making little tiny worlds. Like this world is absolutely gigantic. This was a monumental effort to get this in here. Like this involved, you know, hacking a self-driving car LiDAR scanner, doing a whole bunch of precision math, and being able to figure out how to hack that into a video game platform for people to experience together. You don't necessarily have to go that far. One of my most popular worlds I threw together in 10 minutes, and it's just a recreation of Zombo.com. And
you can do anything there.
Yeah, you can do anything at Zombo.com. And, you know, it's just, you don't necessarily need to spend a lot of time trying to think, like, I'm building a world. When you hear, I'm building a world, you think it's some kind of huge monumental effort. It doesn't have to be. Most people's first world is...
Portal.
Yeah, if you
portal,
it's the rule you have to roll. Okay.
40-minute warning.
How much time do we have?
Just
40
came up
minute
on 40
warning?
minutes.
Wait, we're at 40 minutes?
You're at 40 minutes.
Yep.
Okay. So
Oh,
wait,
so much
so
to
before
see,
we,
so little time.
yeah, so much to do.
So just a cool world. It's called Deep
Yeah.
Blue. It's just a fun
Mhm.
tropical, like, yeah, like, well, that's kind of, well, look this way. Like, come over here. Like, you got little like little tiki huts going on, things like that. Little ship. I think this one has the underwater tunnel too in it, doesn't it?
Yeah, so this was a world. I think this was made by a small team of people who love to build water-based really cool like vacation worlds.
Stir the pot, baby. You can't splash people though. Wish you could do that.
So a lot of this world uses the that programming language I was talking about earlier, that Udon, to do a lot of really cool things. It's using a custom script right now that basically is making us wade in the water. Our characters aren't on the ground. They're actually, we're actually floating. These are things that you can do with programming. You don't necessarily need to know how to model and build stuff. You can, if you know how to code, you can learn how to do this as well, and it's very straightforward. Because learning to code in this kind of limited scope of making character interaction in a video game is a really good introduction to learning how to code, especially in especially in VR chat, because they've got a few different ways that you can program. The first one is Udon, which is they use all these lines to connect stuff, and it's very intuitive. And then once you kind of get past that, they have a thing called Udon Sharp, which is C Sharp for VR chat. And you can start to learn more and more. And again, those are skills and things that you can take other places. You can learn other things with it. And if you learn just a little bit, you can do some really cool stuff. You can have a nice little world where you can float around with your friends. This world in particular has it's called a camera override. It actually has all this logic where if you pull out your camera, it can actually take over it and do a lot of really cool things. Make it look like a fancy DSLR. It can give you overlays. It can turn it into a cool Instagram-ish camera. It's kind of hard to show it off in here, but if you have VR chat, you can definitely check it out. It's really cool.
Let me see.
Oh, I just noticed if you like
another-
poke your
another
head
good
down,
one
you
here.
sink. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no fish in here. The other the apocalyptic station. I don't know if you've seen that one. It's like it literally looks like something from Spirited Away.
Oh, I have not. Show it off.
Let me do a drop portal to that guy.
Okay.
You're underwater.
Portal too close to a player.
Run back out to the beach.
Go run over on.
Float out.
Go on land.
Float on.
I can't
Float
swim.
on. All right, there's the portal. Hopefully we can get to it. So there you go. So if you're a fan of Miyazaki's work, especially Spirited Away, this is a very, very, very Spirited Away sort of esque feeling. I know it's not exactly I think what they were going for, but look at the school of fish. Look at the little AI fish down here. Look at this. Look at how beautiful.
I'm gonna get a fishy.
So, but just fun worlds to hang out with your friends and just relax and experience the many moods that were created. Ah, yeah, see, like fishing rods there. Judah is trying to cast off.
It's very neat what you can do with this with VR chat in terms of just very basic coding, can do things like let you be able to pick up stuff, move things around, make something that feels like a very interactive world. That's one of the really cool things I like about just being able to make this stuff, be able to share it, and be like, the social VR is kind of what I feel is really cool about it. Like being able to do stuff that you're very easily able to share off and show with your friends. So if there's anything I want to give out of this panel, and I think Fizz can agree with me on this, is that like, if you're interested in making stuff, make it and share it, because all of your friends will definitely appreciate it, and you're going to get feedback.
Absolutely.
You're going to get people talking about it. I know when I first uploaded the Anthrocon world, at this point a year and like some change ago, you know, I had a lot of people that said, "Wow, this is great," and then immediately just go into giving me feedback. Some of it was a little bit mean. You know, like it's a PlayStation 1 version of the convention, but you know, it's one of those things where it's very, 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 very cool what people will be able to like give back to you and be able to, you know, talk back and
Yeah,
forth and be able to
and,
build stuff
like,
with people.
For me, I wanted to be able to do something with VR chat, and the LiDAR thing was kind of a natural way to put that stuff together. And it's really one of the only major things that I've done in VR chat, other than messing around with my avatar with customizations. But to me, like, there was somebody that literally went to the LiDAR world and they said, "Oh my gosh, I got all the feels of like being in Pittsburgh, and this whole year sucked because we didn't have conventions, but like I was just there and I just had this emotional connection to it." And it's like literally an emotional connection to a data set and math and stuff. But I'm like,
Yeah.
that literally that one comment from that person made it entirely worth it, having
Yeah.
done all the efforts to put that together, because it was just like, it was my way of contributing something to the VR chat community, but also especially something that is near and dear to so many of our hearts from all the good times and the good feels that we've had together in Pittsburgh. And hopefully shall again, starting again next year.
Yeah, hopefully, as long as you all go get, you know, your shot, and you know, continue to wear the masks where it's appropriate.
Yes, please. That's your public service announcement. Is if you are not vaccinated, please consider going to get it. It will help things get back to normal faster.
Listen to your friend, the stag and the skunk.
Deer. Yep.
Deer. Oh, yeah,
one more world, and then we'll wrap it up here. I got the perfect one here for
okay.
that. So let me reset here. Worlds. All right, there we go.
Oh no, it just shows up white on the camera.
Oh no, is it broken?
It doesn't do anything on the camera.
Oh no.
Oh, you're not seeing it?
No, not on the camera.
Actually, this seems to be broken too, because I can't. Oh, there it goes. Is it not rendering the
not
No,
seeing
photos?
the camera's just a white background. Welcome to the
shit.
void.
Drat.
Well, we can.
Oh, well.
Okay, editors. Note to editors:
Yeah, don't
remove
do
this
this
section,
part.
because I guess
We
I
need
guess
guns,
this didn't
Neo.
work, so all right.
They're gonna
Now-
they're gonna absolutely keep this in here. Actually, like,
Oh,
what
yeah,
time
my
are we
camera,
at?
My camera's got. Well, I can see the particles, but everything's white
1 minute
on
to
my
50.
phone camera
Yeah.
view thing.
49 minutes.
1 minute to 50.
Yeah. We could go to my world.
Is it a 50
all
minute?
right.
Is it a 50-minute panel, or is it? Yeah, let's show up. You showed off one of mine, one of yours. Let's show off one of Judah's, and then we can be done.
Yeah, drop it.
All right.
Drop that.
I got it.
You will see the embodiment of mid-century modern architecture.
This is a really fun little world.
Welcome to my VR chat home.
It doesn't have a bed, but it does have a lot
It
of
does have a
couches.
bed.
Oh, no, it
The
does
bed's
have a bed
upstairs. Yeah. Of
It
course
just
I
doesn't
a
have a
bed.
bathroom,
better
but
internet
it
than
has
me.
a pool.
Yeah, there's a pool. The pool's downstairs. down there. And a pool table.
It doesn't have a bathroom.
It's VR chat. You don't need a bathroom.
Yeah.
If you have to go in VR chat, you have to go in real life.
But no, I had zero
just pointing out
Unity
the obvious here.
experience. Zero Unity experience when I started building this world. Alexa, stop. 50 minutes. Yeah, and I mean, I created a thing with some help from some friends and some advice that I got from the community, and I'm actually quite happy with it. We've had a lot of cool house parties in here that legitimately just feel like house parties.
Lot of VR drunken debauchery,
Yeah.
I'm sure,
Mm-hmm.
has not happened in this place.
The little bit of science I discovered with this world is people leave things in places where they'd usually leave them when they get drunk in real life. I have a bar downstairs with some drinks. I find the drinks like sitting on windowsills or like tossed in the pool.
Yep.
Yep.
But unlike real life, you can just reload the world and it's all cleaned up. I need to
Exactly.
figure out
It's
how
a
to do that
lot
in
easier.
real life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So-
this is definitely a testament to how well you can make something with just some very basic skill sets.
Yep. And
And
it's
where did
things
you
that
get
are
a
easy
lot
to
of the
learn.
assets from?
I
Yeah.
mean, kind of all
Were
over.
a lot of these Unity store?
Yeah, Unity Store, just general online assets. Also, this is all done with Pro Builder. It's a tool that's included in Unity.
Yeah. If you were to look at this world with a super critical eye, you would start to probably see a lot of things that don't make sense. Like you'll see the wood is just,
I see you.
large
You don't make a lot of
cubes.
sense, Burr.
Yeah.
I know. What the heck am I? You'll see, that the textures really kind of don't make all that much sense, but that doesn't matter. That absolutely does not matter at all when you're making something.
I think it adds to the charm
the
of
fact
it.
that, yeah, this world reads so well as a place that feels cozy and comfortable that you see so many people show up, they feel cozy and comfortable. So, I guess the last thing to say about it is you don't need to strive for something that looks super perfect. You don't need to strive for something that looks super realistic. Like, just make stuff, and it's really cool.
I tried to do a 4K texture version of this that looked more like real life, and people hated it. Like, I took it down.
Yeah.
I got more complaints about it than I ever got about this version of the world.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
Oh, do you want to show off any more stuff? Like walk around a little bit more, go downstairs.
We can do a quick
Or should
tour,
people
but
just look
I
up
think you
mid-century
guys,
modern
yeah.
or Judah_goat?
Come
if
to
they'd like
mid-century modern.
to-
You two
to-
should close out though, because
Yeah.
you're coming up on your hour.
Oh man.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh my gosh,
Thank
there's
you
so
very
much
much.
to say, and there's always it's so short a time. It just goes away.
Mhm.
However, we do encourage you to join us. We will be online. I certainly I plan on being online in the evenings for the Anthrocon weekend, and you can find I'm on as Peppercorn Stag, so feel free to send a friend request.
Yep. And,
And
I'll probably
we'll be on a
run around. Check if you haven't checked it out yet. The VRDR, the virtual reality dealers room, is currently going on. It has over 100 booths from all the artists that normally would be at the Anthrocon dealers room. So feel free to check that out. Go. A lot of people are going to be there staffing their booths, so feel free to say hi and kind of get that experience. And that's the new cool
yeah, and
feature
if
this
you see
year.
us, definitely say hi.
Yeah,
but also important
say
to
hi.
point out for people that are new to VR that you do not need VR in order to use VR chat.
No, you do not need VR to use VR chat. It can work just as fine on desktop. So feel free.
Not
to
as
just
immersive as
log
an
in.
experience, but it's a great way to
No, it's-
like introduction. Go on
Absolutely.
Steam, download it, create an account, log in, search Anthrocon, and come find all the wonders and fun stuff.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you all very much for coming out. Yeah, go downstairs and jump in the
Yes.
pool. Wait, what? Okay. Sploosh. I forgot my swim trunks.
Water shader. Look at the fun water shader.
And I'm hoping they've faded us out at this point.